$5. That's all your husband left you. The words landed like a slap across Naomi Brooks's face. The mahogany-paneled conference room fell into a stunned silence, then erupted in cruel, satisfied laughter. 21 members of the Brooks family sat in a semicircle of designer suits and veiled hostility, watching Naomi like she was a stray dog who'd wandered into a private club. Her 7-year-old twins, Jada and Malik, sat stiffly beside her in matching black outfits, their hands clutching hers, too young to understand the depth of the humiliation, but old enough to feel its weight. A crumpled $5 bill lay on the polished table in front of her. "Looks like Anthony finally came to his senses," sneered Judith Brooks, Anthony's mother, her pearls trembling with each smug chuckle. "You don't buy your way into legacy, sweetheart. Especially not with cheap lipstick and welfare babies." That was the moment Naomi knew she was in a war. A war not just for dignity, not just for truth, but for her children's future. What none of them realized, however, was that Anthony Brooks had never been a man who played by their rules. And this humiliating inheritance? It was just the first move of a game they had no idea they were about to lose. This is more than just a story of betrayal and revenge. This is a black story of survival, of a mother's love weaponized into unbreakable willpower. And sometimes, all it takes to unlock a buried legacy is $5 and a plan written in blood, loyalty, and heartbreak. So wherever you're watching from, drop a quick comment and let us know where you're tuning in. It's always powerful to see how far these stories reach. Now lean in. Because in the next few minutes, we're taking you deep inside a world of hidden estates, family conspiracies, federal secrets, and a woman who went from waitress to war general, with nothing but 2 kids and a secret her husband died to protect. Let's begin. Naomi Brooks didn't speak as the conference room emptied. She couldn't. Her voice had buried itself somewhere beneath the crushing weight in her chest. She gripped the $5 bill in her palm, the edges soft and worn, as if it had passed through 100 strangers before landing in her life like a curse. Dean Holloway, the young lawyer who had handed her the envelope, stood silently by her side. He hadn't joined in the laughter. He hadn't even flinched when Caleb Brooks slammed a fist on the table, calling Naomi a thief in a dress. Naomi blinked, the fluorescent lights above casting halos on the polished floor. Her twins clung to her coat, confused and exhausted. Jada was chewing her bottom lip, and Malik kept glancing at the adults, looking for signs that this was all just a bad joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was real. And Naomi had been dismissed with less than a tank of gas. She followed Dean out of the building, her heels clicking against marble like gunshots in an empty hallway. Outside, Richmond's late summer heat wrapped around them like a heavy coat. Dean opened the door to a black SUV and gestured for her to get in. "You're not going to believe what I'm about to show you," he said softly, glancing at the kids before continuing. "But you need to know. That $5 bill? It's not what it seems." Naomi hesitated, the skepticism clear on her face. Dean smiled faintly. "Check the serial number. BX937218. Sound familiar?" Naomi froze. Her eyes widened. That was the same combination Anthony had used for everything. The alarm system. His email passcode. Even their kid's toy safe in the basement. It wasn't just a number, it was his signature. Dean's voice lowered. "He left you something, Naomi. Not in the will, not in the trust. Something private. Something the family doesn't know about. And that $5 bill? It's your key." Naomi clutched the bill tighter as the SUV pulled into traffic. For the first time that day, she felt something stir beneath the humiliation and heartbreak. Not hope. Not yet. But something close. And whatever it was enough to keep her breathing. Enough to keep her moving forward. The ride to the bank was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of papers in Dean's briefcase. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the $5 bill resting in her lap. Jada and Malik had finally dozed off in the back seat, their heads leaning against each other, their breathing soft and steady. Dean glanced at the rearview mirror, then at Naomi. "Anthony didn't trust many people," he said quietly. "But he trusted you. And he trusted me. That's why he didn't put this in the official documents." They pulled into a secured underground parking lot beneath a private banking facility in downtown Richmond. The kind of place where the carpets were thicker than the silence, and the doors didn't open without multiple layers of clearance. Inside, a manager in a charcoal suit guided them to a private vault room. Dean handed over a key and a slip of identification. The manager nodded and stepped back, allowing Naomi to approach the safety deposit box alone. She hesitated. The air in the room felt colder than it should. The box, labeled 1437, was nondescript, like every other one lining the wall. But inside, it held the weight of something her husband had fought to protect. Naomi inserted the key, turned it with a soft click, and pulled the drawer open. Inside were 2 manila folders, a black flash drive, and a sealed envelope with her name written in Anthony's handwriting. Her breath caught. That handwriting, curved and neat, was the same one that had signed birthday cards, scribbled notes in lunchboxes, and left her love letters back when they still believed they had forever. Dean gave her space. Naomi opened the envelope slowly, hands trembling. The letter was short. "Naomi, if you're reading this, they did exactly what I thought they would. But that means you're where I hoped you'd be. This is not the end. It's your beginning. Trust Dean. Trust yourself. And whatever you do, don't let them take what's ours. Nuff. Anthony." Tears welled in Naomi's eyes, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She turned to the folders and opened the first one. Inside were property deeds, financial records, and a trust account worth over $120 million. And in that moment, everything changed. Dean waited as Naomi flipped through the documents. She moved slowly at first, but then faster, driven by something more than curiosity. The trust account, the shell companies, the real estate portfolio. It was more than wealth. It was strategy. And it was all in her name. "I don't understand," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Dean leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Anthony knew what was coming. He knew his family would fight to erase you and the kids. So he started preparing over a year ago. Naomi looked up, her eyes still wide with disbelief. "Anthony wasn't just a businessman," Dean said. "He had a background most of the family never talked about. Before launching his tech firm, he worked with a cybersecurity division contracted by the government. He built firewalls, cracked codes, exposed threats no one else could trace." Naomi blinked. "He never told me any of this." Dean nodded. "He couldn't. It was classified for a long time. But after he left, some of that knowledge didn't leave him. He used it. Quietly. Efficiently." Naomi closed the folder and opened the second one. Inside was a dossier, complete with timestamps, hidden camera footage, and handwritten notes. Every page painted a disturbing picture of the Brooks family's financial dealings. Fraud. Shell corporations. Bribes. Tax evasion. It was a map. A digital trail of secrets. Dean stepped forward. Anthony spent months gathering this. He recorded conversations, hacked into encrypted accounts, and collected proof that would make a federal prosecutor's hands shake. He told me, if anything happened to him, this needed to go straight to you. Naomi's heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because you were the only person he trusted to protect the kids. To finish what he started. And because he knew you'd fight if they ever tried to take from you." The weight of it settled over her, not like a burden, but like armor. Anthony hadn't just left her money. He left her a plan. A path forward. A weapon. Naomi folded the documents carefully, then looked at Dean. "So what now?" Dean met her eyes. "Now, we follow the next breadcrumb. He left you more than just a bank account and files. He left you a home. One they never knew about. And it's time we go there." It took nearly 3 hours to reach the foothills of Augusta County, Virginia. The road narrowed with every mile, twisting deeper into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Cell reception vanished somewhere past the last gas station, and the silence between Naomi and Dean grew heavier with the dense canopy of trees overhead. In the back seat, Jada and Malik had fallen asleep again, lulled by the rhythm of the road. Naomi stared out the window as the landscape shifted from suburban charm to rugged wilderness. Gravel crunched beneath the tires as Dean turned onto an unmarked path, bordered by moss-covered stones and tall pines. A wooden sign nailed to a tree read "Private Property" in faded red letters. "Are you sure this is it?" she asked. Dean nodded. "Positive. Anthony bought this land through a Delaware shell company 3 years ago. No one in his family ever knew about it." They drove another quarter-mile until the trees opened up into a small clearing. And then Naomi sighed. The estate looked nothing like the traditional Brooks mansion in Richmond with its marble floors and cold, white columns. This was something else entirely. A home carved into the land itself, stone and glass woven seamlessly into the hillside. It didn't scream wealth. It whispered sanctuary. The driveway led to a wide garage carved into the base of the home. Solar panels lined the roof, and a quiet stream ran along the eastern edge of the property, its sound soft and calming. Flowering bushes framed a wooden deck, and wind chimes danced gently in the late afternoon breeze. Naomi stepped out of the car slowly, unsure if her legs would hold her. "This is his real legacy," Dean said, joining her. "He built this place for you and the kids. It's fully off-grid, secure, self-sustaining, designed to be safe, no matter what happens." She looked toward the glass-paneled front, where a keypad waited beside the door. She approached cautiously and punched in the serial number from the $5 bill. A soft chime rang, and the door slid open. Inside was warmth. A fire in the stone hearth. Handwritten notes on the kitchen counter. A framed photo of her and Anthony laughing at the beach. Naomi swallowed hard. He had planned every detail. Not just for survival, but for healing. For starting again. And this time, on her terms. The air inside the estate was different. Still. Thoughtful. Every room Naomi entered felt like a message from Anthony, left for a time when he would no longer be able to speak. There were toys in the corner of the living room, unopened books with bookmarks tucked halfway through, and post-it notes reminding her to buy more cereal. Small things, frozen in time. But what mattered most wasn't sitting in plain sight. Dean guided her through the hallway to a library built into the back of the house. Floor-to-ceiling shelves framed a desk made from reclaimed oak, its surface empty but polished, as if Anthony had used it the night before. Behind the desk, a painting of the Blue Ridge Mountains hung centered on the wall. Naomi tilted her head. "That's not just a painting, is it?" Dean stepped forward, pressed his palm against the lower right corner, and the painting swung outward on a hinge. Behind it, a biometric scanner. "Place your thumb here," Dean instructed. She hesitated, then pressed her thumb to the glass. A soft beep, a click, and a panel of the bookshelf to the left slid open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Dean handed her a flashlight. They made their way down slowly. The steps were stone, cool beneath her feet, and the walls lined with concrete reinforced with steel mesh. The temperature dropped as they descended, and Naomi could feel her nerves tighten. At the bottom, a door. Heavy. Reinforced. Dean entered a 6-digit code, then turned a key. The door opened. The room inside was stark. No windows, no decor. But on the wall hung 6 servers, humming quietly. A long table sat in the center, holding 5 hard drives and a binder thick with printed documents, all labeled in Anthony's neat handwriting. Naomi approached slowly, heart pounding. She opened the binder. Wire transfers. Shell company names. Bribery ledgers. Photos of briefcases being exchanged. Notes about judges. Attorneys. Politicians. Everything was dated. Documented. Annotated. This wasn't just information. It was a confession. But not from Anthony. It was a confession of the Brooks family empire, its real foundation, built not on business, but corruption. Naomi looked at Dean, who said nothing. She understood now. This wasn't just a refuge. It was a war room. And Anthony had just handed her the nuclear codes. Naomi spent the night in restless quiet, the weight of the evidence pressing harder on her than any blanket ever could. She didn't sleep. She watched her children, curled up safely in the guest room down the hall, and listened to the wind whisper through the trees just outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. By morning, she was no longer just overwhelmed. She was alert. Dean met her in the kitchen, coffee in hand, his eyes tired but focused. "You ready to see what this place can really do?" They moved to the back room, Anthony's old office, and Dean opened a drawer beside the desk. Inside was a flat panel screen, folded neatly beneath a layer of protective film. He powered it on. The wall behind them shifted, revealing an array of monitors, each connected to different camera feeds from the estate. Naomi took a step back. He wired the whole place. Every angle. Thermal, motion, perimeter alerts. Even drones. He didn't just plan for this. He expected it. Dean clicked a remote, and a grid of security footage popped onto the main screen. Dozens of black and white feeds showing forest paths, gravel roads, and tree lines surrounding the estate. Naomi narrowed her eyes. "What's that?" She pointed to one screen showing a flicker in the tree line. A figure. Then two. Parked near a clearing just outside the camera's visible range was a black SUV. No plates. "They're here," she said. Dean nodded slowly. "They're testing the perimeter. Seeing if you took the bait. My guess. They don't know about this surveillance system." Naomi's voice dropped. "Then we watch. We gather proof. And we don't flinch." Dean handed her a USB drive. "This feeds directly from the cameras. Time-stamped. You record everything." Naomi took it without hesitation. It was strange. A week ago, she'd been serving coffee and counting tips just to cover rent. Now she was sitting in a control room, monitoring a private security system and cataloging evidence that could dismantle one of the most powerful families in the state. She wasn't hiding. She was hunting. And for the first time since Anthony died, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. The estate was secure, but Naomi knew security meant little if the world still knew her name. By the next morning, she and Dean had begun what Anthony had labeled in his contingency plan, the disguise operation. It started with new identities. Dean opened a locked cabinet in Anthony's office, revealing a stack of neatly organized documents. Passports. Birth certificates. Social security cards. All authentic. All legal. All created for a woman named Leah Daniels and her two children, Jordan and Maya. Naomi stared at the IDs. "He really planned everything, didn't he?" Dean nodded. "Every detail. Even down to the school records and medical histories. These weren't just aliases. They were new lives." Naomi took a breath. "Then I guess Leah Daniels has a lot to live up to." They dyed Naomi's hair a few shades darker, gave Jada and Malik subtle wardrobe changes, and swapped every traceable item they'd brought from Richmond. No phones. No laptops. Everything old was gone. Dean also introduced her to Maya Quinn and Dex Carter, two former Navy SEALs Anthony had personally recruited before his death. Maya was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and soft-spoken, with a presence that made the air feel still when she entered a room. Dex was broader, built like a brick wall, but with the calm patience of a man who'd seen the worst and lived through it. They were not just security. They were guardians. "Your husband hired us 2 years ago," Maya told Naomi over dinner that night. "Said one day you might need people who would do more than lock doors." Dex added, "We're here until this is over. However long that takes." Naomi studied them. She saw what Anthony must have seen: loyalty, discipline, and an unshakable moral compass. Jada and Malik adjusted quickly. Children do. Within a day, they started calling Maya and Dex Auntie M and Uncle D. It was natural, and that mattered. Because from this point forward, They couldn't be the Brooks family anymore. They had to become the Daniels. And not just on paper, but in habit, in rhythm, in instinct. Naomi burned the $5 bill that night. Not because it no longer mattered, but because it had already served its purpose. The next chapter didn't need a key. It needed a fire. 3 days passed in quiet tension. Naomi spent every morning reviewing surveillance footage and every evening helping her kids settle into a new routine. They were safe, tucked inside a fortress carved into the mountains, but safety is never permanent when you're being hunted by people who have never once heard the word no. On the 4th day, the message arrived. It came through the estate's secure line, a number only a handful of people knew. Maya intercepted the call, routed it through a voice scrubber, and played it for Naomi from the control center. The voice was unmistakable. Caleb Brooks. Naomi. Or Leah. Or whatever name you're hiding under now. Let's not pretend this game is going to end well for you. He paused. His voice was calm, even friendly. And somehow that made it worse. You got lucky. I'll admit that. But your luck runs out in 48 hours. You will hand over everything. Documents, files, the money, whatever Anthony left you. Leah, you'll find out just how far I'm willing to go. Naomi sat still, jaw tight, staring at the screen like she could reach through it. Caleb continued, his tone darkening. You're not hard to find. I have people. I have reach. And I'm not above making this personal. A sharp beep ended the recording. Just like that. No demands, no second message. Just a clock. Dean looked at her across the room. He's escalating. Which means he's scared. Naomi nodded slowly. He's losing control. And men like Caleb don't handle that well. Maya, arms folded, leaned against the wall. We've confirmed movement near the southern ridge. Unmarked SUVs. No headlights after dark. Classic recon. Dex tapped the map. They're looking for a breach point. Testing us. Naomi didn't flinch. Then we give them something to find. Dean raised an eyebrow. A trap. No, she said, standing. A mirror. We let them see what they've become. She turned back to the monitor and replayed Caleb's message one more time, her voice steady as stone. Let him talk, she said. Because the more he talks, the more he gives us. And beneath the fear, the weight, the endless calculations, Naomi felt something dangerous rising inside her. Resolve. Naomi didn't waste time. She knew that when a threat came with a deadline, the only way to beat it was to move first. So she picked up the burner phone Anthony had tucked in a locked drawer in the estate study. No contacts, no GPS, no traceable history. Just one number written on a sticky note beneath the battery. Lena Price. A name Naomi remembered from the news. An investigative journalist who had exposed corruption in city government 2 years ago and paid the price. Fired, blackballed, threatened into silence. But she hadn't stopped reporting. She'd just gone underground, building her own platform, her own audience. Naomi punched in the number. It rang twice. Who gave you this line? Lena's voice was sharp, no nonsense. Anthony Brooks, Naomi replied. Silence. Go on, Lena said. Naomi didn't give her a pitch. She gave her facts. Files. Names. Video footage. Audio clips. Wire transfers. And estate in the mountains. Surveillance logs. Caleb's ultimatum. She didn't sugarcoat it. This isn't just a wealthy family hiding tax fraud, she said. This is an empire built on intimidation, payoffs, and possibly murder. And now that empire is coming after me and my kids. Lena listened. Quiet. Focused. When Naomi finished, Lena's response was simple. Where do I send the first team? By nightfall, a pair of drone-equipped freelancers were parked 4 miles from the estate, cloaked in forest. Lena called it insurance. If anything happened to Naomi, the story went live. Not a blog post. A documentary. A full exposé broadcast to millions of subscribers across every platform that couldn't be bought or bullied into silence. Dean was impressed. "That's a smart move," he told Naomi. "But you just declared war." Naomi looked at him, unblinking. "I didn't declare anything. They did. I'm just refusing to lose quietly." For the next 48 hours, Naomi and Dean worked around the clock. Maya and Dex fortified the estate. Surveillance footage was cataloged, evidence sorted into cloud backups across 3 different secure locations. And at the center of it all, Naomi stood like a storm gathering momentum. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about flipping the script and letting the whole world watch as the powerful learned what it meant to be powerless. It started with silence. A silence that didn't feel natural. The crickets stopped chirping. The wind, once constant through the trees, seemed to hold its breath. Naomi stood at the edge of the upstairs hallway, staring out through the large window that overlooked the southern tree line. She didn't see anyone, but she knew they were there. Maya entered the room, rifle slung across her chest, calm and alert. Movement picked up on the lower ridge. 4 heat signatures. Maybe more outside the camera's line. Dex's voice crackled through the comms. Gate sensors tripped. They're inside the perimeter. Naomi turned toward the control panel, already launching the internal lockdown system Anthony had built into the estate. Doors slid shut. Windows reinforced themselves. Steel barriers rolled into place beneath the wooden floors, hidden until now. She looked at her children. Jada and Malik were already dressed, backpacks on, standing by the panic room entrance just like they'd practiced. "Go," Naomi said. "Stay quiet. Stay together." They didn't argue. They understood. Downstairs, Dean was monitoring the outside feeds. He pointed at a screen. "That's Caleb's SUV. Black Ford, custom grille, no plates. It's him." A light snapped out from the tree line. Then another. Then a flash. Naomi flinched. The cameras caught the moment the first shot was fired, aimed at the window she'd been standing near 10 seconds earlier. "They're not here to scare you anymore," Dean said grimly. The night became noise. Gunfire echoed through the trees. Maya and Dex moved like professionals. Silent, calculated, never wasting a step. Naomi stayed behind the security wall, relaying commands, tracking movements on the monitors. She wasn't trained for this, but she wasn't afraid either. For 30 minutes, it was chaos. Then, suddenly, quiet. Dean appeared in the hallway, breathing hard. "We got one. Took him alive. Dex has him zip-tied in the garage." Naomi followed him downstairs, past the shattered window, past the spent shell casings. The man in the garage was bleeding from a shoulder wound, shaking, eyes wide. "You don't know who you're messing with," he growled. Naomi stepped closer. "No," she said. "You don't." By sunrise, the mountain was quiet again. Too quiet. Naomi stood in the living room, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, watching steam rise from her coffee mug as the first light spilled across the hardwood floors. The kids were safe in the hidden quarters. Dex had checked on them twice already. Maya was posted near the west wing, eyes on the woods. Dean hadn't slept. He'd been up all night cataloging footage and transmitting it through the encrypted channel Lena had given them. At 6:14 a.m., the estate's main line rang. Dean answered it with a tired voice. He listened for a few seconds, then looked at Naomi. "They're coming." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Dean gave her a look that was equal parts relief and warning. "The cavalry." By 8 a.m., black SUVs with government plates rolled up the private road, followed by a DHS helicopter that landed in the field Anthony had designed as a garden but reinforced underneath as a helipad. Federal agents in tactical gear fanned out, securing the perimeter with methodical precision. A woman in a navy blue suit stepped out of the lead vehicle, her badge clipped to her lapel. "Naomi Brooks?" she asked. Naomi nodded. "Or Leah Daniels. Depends who's asking." The woman cracked a smile. I'm Special Agent Keller, Financial Crimes Division. We've been watching the Brooks family for years, but your evidence just gave us what we needed to make a move. Dean handed over 3 drives, each labeled and time-stamped. This is everything. Video, audio, financial records, phone logs. All backed up on a secure cloud. You'll want to move fast. Keller nodded. Already in motion. We've got arrest teams on their way to 4 states. Naomi looked toward the woods. What about Caleb? Captured 20 minutes ago leaving a property in Albemarle County. We've also got eyes on Judith Brooks and 2 of their offshore brokers. Everything's falling apart on their end. Naomi exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for days. One more thing, Keller added. We reviewed the footage from last night. You held your own. But be aware, some people aren't going down quietly. Naomi met her gaze without blinking. I never expected them to. And for the first time, the war felt like it was ending. Not with bullets, but with truth. 6 months later, Naomi stood in a modest office on the 2nd floor of a brick building in downtown Richmond. No more hidden estates. No more looking over her shoulder. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting soft light on framed photos along the wall. Jada and Malik at their new school, smiling in matching blue uniforms. A black and white portrait of Anthony sat on the bookshelf behind her desk, beside a bronze plaque engraved with the words, The Brooks Redemption Foundation. Naomi wasn't running anymore. She was rebuilding. The foundation used the frozen assets from the Brooks family fortune, funds reclaimed and legally redirected, to support single mothers, survivors of financial abuse, and women escaping systems rigged against them. It offered legal resources, education grants, and even emergency relocation support for families in danger. Naomi knew exactly how much those services mattered. Because once, she needed all of them. She stepped into the hallway where her staff worked, each person handpicked not just for their skill, but for their heart. Dean now served as legal director. Maya and Dex, retired from field duty, headed the foundation's security outreach program, helping train other women in personal safety and tactical awareness. And Naomi? She led with purpose. She spoke at schools, on podcasts, at town halls. She didn't tell her full story. Some parts were still too sharp to unwrap, but she told enough to help others realize they weren't alone. That their voices mattered. That survival was possible. That $5, in the right hands, could change the world. Later that evening, Naomi tucked her kids into bed. Malik asked if he could keep the old $5 bill that Dean had found framed on the wall in her office. Naomi smiled. That bill already changed our lives, she said. But maybe it's time we pass the magic on to someone else. Jada nodded. Like a new beginning for somebody else. Exactly, Naomi whispered. As she stood at the window, watching city lights flicker in the distance, she thought of the women still out there, waiting tables, working double shifts, raising babies alone. Women who needed to know they weren't invisible. Naomi had one question for anyone listening to this story. What will you do with your $5? Because sometimes, that's all it takes. If this story moved you, leave a comment and share it with someone who needs it. And if you believe in second chances, hit subscribe. We've got more stories coming your way.